you make of the scrimmage?
I thought it was good. I mean, I guess the objective and the idea was for everybody to play today. So we have the one exhibition game. Not everybody can play. We're not sending everybody to Boston, but this gave us a chance to look at, each other against each other and really mix up the lines a little bit and, watch guys that are trying to make an impact do it now against NHL players, NHL lineup.
Yeah, I mean, among those guys, a few I wanted to ask about. Berard is one. Looks like the work rate every shift is there. I know the numbers for Hartford were good last year. What's your read on him and the progress that he's made, especially coming off of his first year as a pro?
I think exactly what you said. He's a worker. He's a competitor. He competes in battles, and he plays with a lot of juice. And he did have a really good year offensively last year, and somebody that became somebody that they were counting on as the season wound down. Leaving last year, I think he had a good year, and coming into training camp this year, I think he's looking to make an impression. So, when he does get an opportunity, he's going to have that opportunity to show what he can do. We'll put him in the right situations to do that.
I mean, he's the kind of guy that it's going to be important to see how he does when he's up against established NHL guys.
It is. I mean, we'll eventually get to that,
Yeah.
but he's obviously not in the game today. But he'll, when he does get his chance, he'll get those opportunities.
Is he someone you can see at some point this year debuting?
It's hard to say.
Yeah.
That'll be up to him, and training camp and how that goes and where it goes from there.
Kind of on the flip side of that, a player who wasn't out there, who might play tonight, Brendan Hoffman. Just where do you think he's at as well, and where do you see him?
I think he's in the same. I think it's probably the same conversation. Had a good year last year and put up some points. Comes into camp this year and he'll get an opportunity to make noise as well. He is in the game today, so this will be his first crack at it.
You touched a little bit, I think a couple days ago, on Edstrom having a couple of rookie games against the Flyers. He got some games with you guys last year, so obviously it looks like he's close. Seems like, skill set wise, there are some similarities. Obviously, the size stands out when you compare him to a guy like Rempe. But Edstrom, I mean, where do you view him in the competition, maybe for one of those final roster spots?
I think they're a little bit different player.
Yeah.
You're right. When they're next to each other, it's the size is the first thing that you notice. They're both really, really big individuals, and so that's the first thing that you compare. They both can skate well. They both can play a physical game. It's different, their physical game. It's a little bit different. But again, the next step for both of those players would be to, now that the rookie games are over or last season's over and you come into training camp, you get a summer training, you come into training camp, you get into games and opportunities to show what you can do to actually make an impact. And so that's what we'll be looking for with regard to this.
How much do you either take last year into account or kind of just focus on this year and forget about last year in terms of your evaluation of like, a guy like Rempe or a guy like Edstrom, like what they did last year? Do you take that into account and that kind of?
Yeah, I think it factors into it. I mean, they were the guys that were called upon last year, and so that at that time last year, it put them in a position. We called down and see who's playing well. If your name's one that's being mentioned, then you've done something well down there to put yourself in that position. When they get called up here, well, that's something that I guess you remember as well. It is a new year, it's a new training camp, but I think the history travels a little bit, but that doesn't guarantee anything. You've got to come out and do well in this time frame that we have here.
Sorry. When you have an exhibition game coming up, do the organizations communicate about the lineup they're going to use so that one team isn't playing all their 18-year-old, 19-year-olds, and the other team is playing all their 24-year-old, 6'7" guys?
We share lineups, and so I know, I think there is some. Doesn't have to be. You don't have to say anything. I guess it all depends on the organization. We sent our lineup. I think typically the visiting team sends it to them first, and then you get theirs back in return. And the communication with the organization. I guess it just depends on what you want out of the games as well. Sometimes it factors into home games and whether you want your veteran players traveling or you don't want them traveling.
So have there been times where you've seen the other team's lineup and you've adjusted a little bit because of what they were presenting?
Maybe.
Is it just you want to see your guys?
Maybe. I mean, maybe. I can't remember, Larry, to be honest with you, off the top of my head. But there's a chance that I could have done that. You don't want anybody to get hurt. You don't want anybody to get blown out. And I think that maybe you could, all right, you see what's going on, and maybe you put in a couple more NHL players that could level the field a little bit. And so, but I can't think of any, but I'm not saying that I haven't.
When you choose or decide who's going today, I mean, you obviously both Igor and Jonathan are here. What goes into thinking, like, why are they both here and one of them's not there?
Our two goalies?
Yeah.
It's a little bit too early in camp for me. I'd rather get them work here and have them work on their game. Again, sending them on the road. Eventually, when you get down to games 4, 5, and 6, if we go on the road, I'm fine with that. But just a little bit too early in camp. Plus, the other thing too is it's early in camp, and if you want to evaluate other players, they might not be here at the end of camp. Some players are going to get moved on here at some point. We're going to, you'll start to make cuts and you'll start to weed through, move through the camp and send players back to juniors or release from tryouts or to the American Hockey League. Like, there's a process that goes on, and so your group of 61 for us that are actually available to skate is now becoming smaller. It goes to 45, and then it goes down to 33, and then it goes to 24. And so to see the players that you want to see, sometimes you have to move them into camp early.
Is there a certain number of preseason games you'd like to get through before you start doing cuts, or do you think it'll come soon?
I think it's based on the schedule, on what happens. Usually it's after a few games, 1 or 2 games. I think it's an ongoing process too.
Yeah,
There's
I know
a
there's rounds.
yeah.